Welcome to the Golf Improvement Podcast, episode 181.
Welcome to the podcast for golf lovers and enthusiasts who are looking to take their games to new heights. Dedicated to custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice to improve your golf game. This is the Golf Improvement Podcast with your host, Tony Wright.
Hello, this is Tony Wright from Game Improvement Golf in Oak Ridge, Tennessee with the Golf Improvement Podcast, dedicated to sharing useful information on professional club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice techniques. I create exceptional golf clubs. You shoot lower scores. Golf professional Gary Nicol and performance coach Karl Morris just released their third book in their Lost Art book series, The Lost Art of the Short Game. It is, like their first two books, an instant hit with information and guidance to help you improve your short game. So welcome back, Gary and Karl, and enjoy this great interview with them about the lost art of the short game.
Taking your game to new heights. www.gameimprovementgolf.com.
Hello, this is Tony Wright with episode 181 of the Golf Improvement Podcast. And today, welcome back golf professional Gary Nicol and performance coach Karl Morris. They just released their third book in their Lost Art series, The Lost Art of the Short Game. And today we'll dive into some of the great concepts they talked about and shared in their new book. We last talked in October 2019. It just seems like a little bit ago that we did, but boy, what a time we've had. So there you go. So Gary and Karl, thank you for doing this, and I look forward to the discussion today.
Thanks for asking us back, Tony. I can't believe it's so long since we talked last time. And if anybody at the time when we spoke last time had told us what we were going to be faced with in the next couple of years, nobody would have believed it, would they? They would have said it was too far-fetched as a science fiction movie.
Well, it gets back to your concept of gratitude, right, Karl?
Yeah, absolutely.
We have many things to be grateful for. So, well, when did the two of you decide that the third Lost Art book was something that needed to be done, and to make it about the short game? And was there any kind of a specific driver or thought that led you to decide to do another one?
I don't know if there was a specific day or date or time that we decided we were going to do this, but I guess on the back of the relative success of the first two books, we felt that the one thing that was missing was some concepts and some content on the short game. So the Lost Art of Putting, pretty self-explanatory, as is the Lost Art of Playing Golf. And the thing that we hadn't really touched on to any great amount was the short game. And we felt that's where a lot of golfers of all abilities tend to struggle. So we felt there was a bit of a gap there, and we've got lots of thoughts and ideas on that, so we thought we'd like to share them.
Yeah, and you really do have a lot of thoughts and ideas. There's no way we could talk unless you wanted to talk for 2 or 3 hours, and you probably have more to do. But there are many concepts in this book that are worth talking about. So, well, that's neat. Now, you attracted some very interesting people and let's say heavy hitters to contribute to this. Bob Vokey, Andrew Coulthard, Vin Harris, who I hadn't heard about, who seems very interesting. What's the process for, just calling up and asking and say, hey guys, I'd love you to be part of this book, or how'd you do that?
It really is surprising, Tony, who'll lend a hand to such a project like this and give their time. But both Gary and myself have been very fortunate with some of the people that we've managed to meet over the years. We've both been coaching 25 years plus, I suppose now, and over that period of time, you do get to meet some extraordinary people, and it's surprising. The likes of Bob Vokey, as a good example. We got introduced, but Gary knew him from back in the days on tour, but we got introduced to him personally with a close friend of ours who is a senior international in Ireland, who's very close friends with Bob, and we got talking on a FaceTime call. And it was just wonderful to meet and spend time with Bob. And he's in his, I think he's in his 80s now. But if you look at him, he looks.
Is he really? I didn't realize. Yeah. Oh my goodness!
Incredible. Yeah, I mean, he could pass for sort of 660. And talk about a Californian sun being a good advert for a long life. But what is clear from Bob when you speak to him is just his absolute enthusiasm and passion for what he does. He's a master craftsman, but he passionately believes that what he does helps golfers, and that's what gets him up in the morning still and gets him excited. And who he's not helped in the game of golf is not worth mentioning. Going the real true greats of the game. He spent time with Trevino and Seve Ballesteros. In fact, as Bob told us, Seve in the end really would only let Bob sort of mess around with his golf clubs. He was the one who if he wanted anything doing with any of his golf clubs, he wanted Bob to do it. So, it's a good. Bob's a great example of finding a passion and living life thoroughly as a result of that singular passion.
Absolutely, he's one of these guys who doesn't believe he's actually working. The old saying about find something you enjoy, and if you can turn that into a livelihood, then it's not really a job. And he doesn't really view what he does as a job. It's just his passion. That's something he gets paid for. He's fortunate enough to get paid for.
Yeah, and I think he gets to do things and make things even a little better all the time. I guess that's one of the things that juices him is, how can I make this wedge, this grind, this, every little bit and piece of what he does a little better.
Yeah, I think one of the things that stuck out, certainly for me, when we had a couple of chats with him, was that he said that he has the best laboratory on the planet for what he's doing, which is, the major tours, the PGA Tour and the European Tour, and access to some of the best players, and they will tell him what they are feeling, what they would like to feel, and he goes away to his workbench and gets all these angle grinders and bits and pieces out and creates what he thinks they will like. And they will test them, and they will tell them if they do or they don't. And I think more often than not, they're delighted with the work that he does for them. Fascinating guy, he really is. As Karl said, he'd pass for 60.
Yeah.
But if you'd never seen him, you didn't know who you were speaking to, you'd think he's a 21-year-old.
Wow.
And what he reinforced, Tony, and I'm sure we'll come on to this, and it was something that really Gary brought home for me, is Bob clearly understands or describes how many golfers don't actually really understand the tool in the hand, the wedge in the hand, and how it should be used. And you look at pretty much everything else in life. If we've got a screwdriver in our hand, we don't try and knock nails in with it. And if you've got a toothbrush in your hand, it's for brushing your teeth, and you use it appropriately. But so many golfers don't really understand the concept of how to use the club in the hand, what it's designed to do, how it's designed to interact with the turf. And as we talk about a lot in the book, and Gary will probably enlarge on this, is that if somebody read the book and got nothing else other than a really, really clear concept of how they should use that tool in the hand, their short game would be transformed. Because once your brain has a clear idea of the correct concept, it can organize movement around that concept. If it doesn't have the correct concept of how the tool in your hand is supposed to be utilized, then you're always going to struggle. And when we find it seems such a simple and obvious thing to understand what it is that you're trying to do with the club in your hand. But both go as far as to say there's probably 80-90% of golfers really don't understand. They use the word like bounce, and they don't really understand what it means. But once you have crystal clear clarity on that, as I say, it's amazing how things start to organise. Your movements improve, your contact improves, and all of a sudden you're knocking chip shots close to the flag.
Yeah. And we're going to come back to that a little bit in one of the other questions I'm going to add. Definitely can't leave that part without discussing. But, when I was reading the book, I almost remember the time that this little phrase came up, and it just said, oh my gosh, this is almost what much of the book is going to be about. And this was it. It was on page 81. They show up that the movement we call the golf swing is influenced by many things, not least how the game actually occurs to you, the story you tell yourself about what the game is and what it means to you. And at least to me, in many ways, for short game, it almost feels, at least if I'm thinking about my own game, that phrase and sort of concept is more relevant for the short game than it is anywhere else. Now, maybe not, but at least it really resonates with me. Talk a little bit about, what got you to write that in there and your thoughts on it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting concept about how the movement that you make in a golf swing will be influenced by how the world occurs to you. If you go on the golf course, Tony, and the way that the golf course occurs to you is that if it's a test, and every shot that you play is a reflection of your ability, but also maybe it's a reflection of your own self-esteem. A poor shot's a dent to your ego. If that's the way that the golf course occurs to you, if that's the way that the game occurs to you, then it's very difficult. It's going to be very difficult to create freedom of movement. It's very difficult to engage the creative, imaginative part of your brain. So, if you can begin to shift, as an example with the short game, we talk about being creative, engaging your imagination. If you could shift the way that the world occurs to you from I've got to get this up and down to wow, this is an opportunity to create something. This is an opportunity to create a unique shot in a unique moment. We talk about in the at the beginning of the book about a couple of shots that I'm sure we'll touch on later. Seve's shot at Birkdale in '76 and Tiger's shot on the 16th at the Masters, and those were two of the greatest exponents of the short game. But they're just a pure example of two players just lost in creativity, lost in imagination. It didn't occur to them that it was a test. It occurred to them that it was an opportunity, and that's where we're heading with the idea of how the world occurs to you. Do you see the golf course as a safe place to go and play? Is it a safe place to go and express your ability, or is it one shot from insanity all the time?
One shot from insanity. Oh my gosh!
Your whole self-worth is dictated by the direction that a golf ball takes.
Yeah, very much. That's we talk about. Perception. Do you perceive certain shots to be obstacles or opportunities? And if you view every shot as a real obstacle getting in your way, then your attitude and your aptitude will be massively influenced by that. But conversely, if you see whatever shots around the greens as great opportunities to create something special, then again, you will definitely view the game of golf and the way you play the game completely differently.
Yeah. So
we're trying to open up people's minds to what is possible and try to view things as opportunities rather than obstacles. And I think that just by flipping that round makes such a massive difference to your enjoyment of the game.
Now, I had an experience the other day. I played Tuesday, and I was in a bunker on the 16th hole. And, I wasn't going to talk necessarily about this, but there was another phrase in the book that I thought was kind of really cool. And it was somewhere in there you said, watch this. And when I read that, I thought, that's almost like a neat kind of a cue to start a short game shot. So I got in the bunker and I said to myself, watch this. And then I did what I did and kind of let go. And I hit it within an inch of the hole from about 20 yards away.
See, that's a hugely important point, Tony, what you've just said there, that everybody listening should really, really think very deeply about what you've just said. Because go through the process of what you've just explained. You've stepped into that bunker and said, watch this. Now, the second that you said, watch this, what would have happened is your imagination would have been fired up, your imagination would have gone to work, because by definition, watch this. What is it? What am I supposed to watch? Well, at some level, you must have created that shot in your mind's eye. And then all of a sudden, you've given yourself permission to move your body as a reaction to that image that you have in your mind, and expressing yourself with some freedom. So that very simple phrase, watch this, creates a cascade of very, very beneficial effects in the brain that culminated in, as you just described, a really pleasurable and enjoyable shot and experience.
Yeah. And that kind of, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, Ken. Go ahead.
No, I was just about to say, when you're saying watch this, in your imagination, in your mind, you're not telling people or anyone else, including yourself, to watch what's going to be a horrible shot, are you?
I hope not. I don't think so. Yeah. It was allowing there to be some opportunity, and not thinking, okay, I've got to swing the club in this way, and all those kind of things that I and others can often do.
Which get in the way of your natural ability and your motor skills.
Yeah. And that kind of leads into the next thing that you talked about in the book too, which is, you talked a lot about external versus internal focus, and how having an external focus on tasks can help create better shots. Share a little bit more of what you were, and we talked, I think, about it a little bit in the watch thing, but any more you want to share in that kind of arena?
Karl, do you want to go on with this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty clear, Tony, for many, many years now that the sort of scientific research on this is that, whenever you're trying to perform a movement skill, a motor task, if you have an external focus as opposed to an internal focus, that generally speaking, for the vast majority of people, the results will be far, far better. For anybody listening and tuning in thinking, what the hell are they talking about, internal, external focus? Well, an internal focus is the primary way that golf is taught. An internal focus is where you are basically telling your body to move by giving it a command. You're telling your body, using English, Spanish, French, German, or whatever, Japanese, to do this or do that. Move your hips, turn your wrists, flex your knees or whatever. You're giving your body a command to move in a certain way. An external focus is whereby you're focusing your attention on the effect of the movement. So what the golf ball is going to do as it lands, the flight of the ball, or indeed what the golf club is going to do. What is the path that the club's going to travel on? What's the club face going to do? Now, again, I mentioned it earlier on. Nobody learned to brush their teeth by rotating their elbow over a fixed axis.
Yeah.
How we learn to brush our teeth in the days of toothbrushes as opposed to electronic brushes, but in the days of toothbrushes, we learn to use the tool. We learn to use the tool in our hand. Now, the tool in your hand when you're brushing your teeth is an external focus. You don't learn to drive a car by keeping your shoulders level and turning your elbows from side to side. You learn to use the wheel. Now, when you sort of frame it like that, you don't learn to write by moving your arm in a certain way and hinging your wrist. You learn to use the pen. So, anecdotally, we can think of a million things in our life where we've, without any coaching whatsoever, used an external focus to get the job done. So the science backs that up. Our own personal experience backs that up. So basically what we're saying with external focus, especially with the short game, is just, as I mentioned earlier on, is become very acquainted with what the golf club is supposed to do. How is it supposed to move? What is it that you're actually trying to do with it? And most people, when they use external focus, find that there's a freedom there, because you're not tying yourself in knots with lots of commands. You're actually giving your brain a directive that it can operate with really quite seamlessly and quite efficiently. Man evolved as a result of using and survived as a result of using tools in the hand. But I don't think there were probably too many videos knocking around in the days when cavemen threw spears and slung things out of a sling to survive, to eat.
God.
thank goodness. Otherwise, we'd have probably ended up going back into the sea. So, you can see many, many experiences that everybody will have listening. It makes sense that to at least explore an external focus. One caveat is if you're a great player and you've made progress with your game and you're really happy with your golf and you are very internally focused, we would be the last people to say change that. The book that we've written this time and the other two books, nowhere at any point do we say this is how to do it. We just give people some options, give people some ideas, some concepts, and say, well, go away and just try that. See how that is in your own personal experience. Because I'm sure Gary will lead on from this. That we're sick and tired of hearing about the model. The golf swing should look like this, or it should look like that. When everybody is so different, everybody's got such a different makeup, physically, mentally. How on earth can we fit people into models?
Very much so, and going back to what we discussed very early on in the podcast is how you see the game. Everyone's going to see the game slightly differently. So the three of us maybe, let's say we all finish up in pretty much the same spot to the right-hand side of the ninth green. Now, we may all choose to play a similar shot with a different club, or we may all choose to play the same shot with different clubs, or different shots with the same club. It's just impossible to say, you got to do it this way, you got to do it that way. I mean, it's crazy. But unless we know what a player's intention is, how dare we comment on how they should or should not play that shot or move in order to play that shot? Everyone has an innate ability to do what they feel is necessary or required at that specific moment in time. So, I may see a shot entirely different to you, Tony, and you may see it entirely different to me. We may see it the same way. Who knows? Until we discuss it, we will never know. Yeah. So as Karl said, we were not going to say to anyone, if internal focus works for you, you've got to change, because no, if it works for you, then it works for you. It's all about finding your way, as we bang on about quite a lot. It's about finding your way. It's not the way. It's definitely about finding your way. What works best for you? That's what we're really interested in. And that's what we want you and everyone who plays golf to kind of discover for themselves through exploration, through experimentation. Because that way you own what you discover.
Yeah. And we're going to talk at the end a little bit about, and you don't use the word practicing, about training. But I would think, I hadn't thought about this when I kind of posed questions to you, but, external focus in effective practice just looks like an absolute match. I know way some of the kids I'm working with are the head coach of this junior college team is teaching them some ways to practice to learn different shots, and it's trying to hit it in that 3-foot circle. That's their external focus, right?
Yeah, exactly. Prime example.
Yeah.
Perfect example.
Now, this next little part was interesting. I can't remember if you talked about this in the other books, but it really was really neat the discussion on the Bruce Lee approach to learning. I don't think you did, but, researching your own experience. And that comes back to what you said just a few minutes ago. What is your experience for how you're doing it and finding your way it works, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting man, Tony, Bruce Lee. I mean, he was taken from us far too early. He was only his early 30s, and I think we're all of a certain vintage that we remember. Certainly in the 70s and 80s in the UK, that martial arts were incredibly popular. We had a TV program called Kung Fu, which was based, I think, around the life of Bruce Lee. Yeah. But for all his martial arts films and all the sort of wonderful fight scenes that he put together, he was an incredibly well researched man and really a philosopher. And you look at the extent of some of his writings, and when I looked at the way he sort of summed it up of research your own experience, absorb what's useful, and add specifically your own. Take away what's useless. Those kind of 4 points are just incredible wisdom, really, and underpinned with the idea of researching your own experience. And I really don't think many of us do that in the sense that we come off a golf course And, we'll go in the club, and buddies will say, well, what did you shoot? How was the day? Blah, blah, blah. It's good, bad, 84, 60, 67, 93 or whatever comes out, and we move on. To me, researching your own experience is just taking the time after a round. I mean, if you're really serious about your game, I think this would be a worthwhile exercise for anybody to do over the next sort of 6 months or so. Every time that you play golf, just sit down with a notebook and ask yourself perhaps the question, what were the 3 best shots today? And if you ask yourself the question, what were the 3 best shots, and you go back to that experience and you go back and you sort of think about what you did to produce those shots, what I think you'll do is uncover some real nuggets of gold, because you'll find what makes you tick. You'll find out the key ingredients that seem to allow you to play some of your better golf. Now, most golfers don't even ask that question. They don't ask the question, what do I do when I do it well? Most golfers just ask the question, tell me what I'm doing wrong, is the classic phrase, isn't it, when you go for a lesson? What am I doing wrong?
What we're doing wrong, don't we?
Yeah. But to actually really reflect on what actually happened out there, what went on during the round in a kind of neutral way. It's not about beating yourself up, but it's just asking some good questions and reflecting back what happened in the round of golf, which to think about the 3 best shots is pleasurable in itself. But as I say, there's some real nuggets of gold that can be uncovered when you do that. And
they are there. You don't have to look too far for them. But sadly, what we tend to do is when we reflect on a round of golf, we tend to highlight the poor shots and the bad scores.
I would think, too, that 3 best shots...
Playing golf.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
You only remember the good ones. You don't remember the bad ones. You're not interested in the bad ones. You just want to remember the good ones.
Well, the concept of 3 best shots, too, when you said it to me was like, there's more to it, when we talked earlier, than just the mechanics, too, that you were doing something mentally, the way your routine was and all those kind of things that probably was different than it was with some other shots.
Absolutely.
Right. And so that's where as you said, I think the nuggets of gold can come about. So,
well, I think what you might find, or what we hope people will find, and it's kind of going a little bit deeper, I suppose, into all of this, is and it relates to how the golf course and the world occurs to you, is really what kind of person are you when you play your best golf? Who are you being on the golf course when you play well? And that's why I think Bruce Lee's idea about researching your own experience is worthwhile. And I can't imagine too many people will look back and say, well, I was really at my best when I was miserable and I beat myself up all day and I didn't speak to anybody.
Really angry. I was angry with the world. I was angry with the golf course. I was angry with the golf course design. I was angry with the green staff. It doesn't work like that, does it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The production of a golf shot, the problem is that with the game that we've distilled it down through the medium called TV to a very mechanistic, simplistic approach, in that if you've hit a bad shot, it must mean that your golf swing suddenly changed.
Yeah.
You've moved the club too much from the inside or the outside, or the classic one, or look at that, he's flipped his hands through impact, or he came out of it, or what the hell does come out of it mean, for starters? I've never understood that phrase, but that's another thing. But we've stripped the game down to a very, very simplistic, mechanistic approach, almost a little bit like, in many ways, I suppose, Western medicine. We just home in on a certain part of the body and say, well, this needs fixing, just give it a pill, put something on it, and it should be fixed and done. And as we know, there's a bit more to it than that. There's a bit more going on in the human system when something goes wrong than just one specific area. In the same way with your golf, the person that you are on the golf course surely will influence the way that you move your body. And then the way that you move the body obviously affects the golf shot. So it sounds complex, but it actually is very simple, really. Is that you just reflect a little bit more on the person that you are when you go and play golf, and decide, well, okay, I was this kind of person when I played well. It's up to me to choose to be that person next time. That's something I can decide to do. Nobody else can make me be anybody on the golf course other than the person I decide.
Yeah, that was this last part of the discussion so far was my favorite today. So thanks for that. We said we were going to come back to talking about the tools a little bit, and so I think this is probably a good time. And we really do need a little bit. So both of you talk about some of your perspectives about, the tools of the short game and things people sometimes just don't understand.
Absolutely. I learned many, many years ago that I thought I knew how to use the tools properly and realized that I didn't. So I was very fortunate enough to speak to top players, top coaches, and the guys who actually make the golf clubs. People like Bob Vokey and Roger Cleveland. I mean, Bob, as Karl said on our Zoom calls with him, it was fantastic. And he helped us understand why clubs are designed the way they are. Over the years, we've learned a lot more about why clubs are designed, especially wedges. And he just kind of verified and validated what we thought we believed, and we thought we believed to be correct. And as Karl had mentioned earlier on in the podcast, that the number of people who go into the pro shop and they buy new wedges because they look nice, or they played with Big Dave on Sunday who had 3 chip-ins and almost told a bunker shot, so I better get some of them as well. But they have no concept of what the club is designed to do or how it's designed to be used. And we often say that regardless of how much you spend on a new driver, putter, set of irons, or bunch of wedges, is the one thing you'll never get with them is a user's manual.
That's right.
The girl behind the counter will gladly take your credit card and sell you a new set of wedges, and off you go. And then you think that you've got the silver bullet to cure your short game, and you go off to the short game area and you duff a few and you thin a few and you chunk a few and you leave a couple in the bunker, and you think, God, these wedges aren't very good at all, are they? But until you learn how to use them, then they're never really going to be any good to you. So, we don't tend to do an awful lot of technical instruction in the books, but we thought we'd make an exception here because I think it's so, so important to learn how to use the soul of the golf club. And there's all sorts of things in the book that will help you understand some training exercises as well. But once you understand the concept that the back edge of the sole, or the bounce as it's known in the trade, if you like, is there to help you. So, Bob talks about the bounce being your friend. So let's make friends with it. Let's become real good friends with the bounce of the trail edge, back edge of the sole. And once you do that, a prime example, I had a guy for a short game lesson this morning who quite a pretty solid golfer, but he had very limited understanding of the tool that he had in his hand, his wedges. So once we kind of helped him understand why the club was designed in a certain way and how he could use that to his advantage, after about 4 or 5 bunker shots, he said, God, this is like cheating. It just makes it so much easier and much more fun. It's much more enjoyable. So, yeah, you don't get a user's manual when you buy new golf clubs. Can you imagine going to a store and buying a new laptop or an iPad or whatever it is, and you get it home, you're looking through the box, and there's no instruction manual. What do? There's no user's manual. God, you go straight back to the shop and say, well, this is great. It looks fantastic, but how do I use it? So learn how you learn why. Do a bit of research on why clubs are designed the way they are, and then we talk a lot about exploration and experimentation. Try all sorts of different shots with different clubs. That's how you get to know them. That's how you get to understand why they're designed the way they are. And once you get that, once you've got these concepts clear in your mind, the short game becomes so much easier and so much more fun. All the obstacles that you've kind of put in your own way now become opportunities to, again, as you said, Tony, watch this. Wouldn't it be great if you could stand over every shot around the green and say, watch this? with some confidence that you know you're going to pull off a pretty spectacular and enjoyable shot.
Yeah. I see so many people that will like lean their hands 10 or more degrees forward, and obviously it's because they're afraid of, kind of chunking the shot, but they had no idea that they were just totally taking away the wonderful part of the club that was designed the way it was.
Well, they've just negated everything it was designed to do.
Yeah.
If you've got a 56 degree wedge, say for example, with 12 degrees of bounce, and you place the ball in the back of your stance, you lean the shaft forward 13 or 14 degrees, you've got your weight forward, then all of a sudden that attack angle gets way too steep, the leading edge comes in first, you can't use the back edge because it's sticking up in the air. I'm a big believer in the leading edge will get you into trouble and the back edge will get you out of trouble.
Yeah. That's a nice phrase. I like that. Yeah. Yeah,
and it's a great one to live by as well, as long as you understand that the more you use the leading edge, the more trouble you're going to get into. The more you use the back edge, the more trouble you're going to get out of.
It's just on that point, Tony. I think that one of the most important things is for many golfers is the word bounce. And if you think, well, what does bounce conjure up in somebody's mind? Well, it conjures up the idea that the golf club is going to bounce, and you would think that would make the ball thin, or you would duff it, or whatever. We mentioned in the book that perhaps bounce is not the greatest word ever. Maybe the back edge should have been called glide or something like that, where the back edge just glides through the turf. It doesn't bounce through the turf. Now, if you think the club is going to bounce, if you have that concept in your head, what would be the way that you would try and negate that? Well, just as you said, you would lean the shaft forward and put your weight forward, and then all of a sudden you create that steep angle of attack where you're not actually using the bounce in the way that it's been designed. So see that the back edge is going to glide through the turf rather than bounce.
Yeah, we talk about a phrase that we both really like is surfing the turf.
Yeah.
Keeping that back edge on the turf or surfing, you don't want the leading edge. So if you think about it this way, if the leading edge is going to dig into firm turf, just imagine what it's going to do in a bunker. I mean, originally the sand iron and the sand wedge were designed with that back edge sitting a little lower than the leading edge, so that you take a little shallow sand divot so the club does not dig into the sand. So if it's going to dig into firm turf, just think about all the damage you can do in soft sand. So again, just learning how to use the back of the sole is vitally important.
Yeah. I think I think there's even we're not going to say who the manufacturer is that talks about uses the word glide in some of their discussions.
Yes,
and I just realized that and thought about it, and that's pretty smart from them,
Yeah,
it is. Yeah. I wish we could wish we could lay claim to that one, but we can't, unfortunately.
No,
I think we probably got a claim anyway.
Yeah. Gosh. We're going to end soon, but there were some words that you said over and over in the book, and we'll bring those up in a second, but also maybe each of you after that talk about your favorite training game. But intention, attention, and attitude. I mean, what, a dozen times throughout the book you talk about that?
We make no apologies for that.
Yeah.
They are the cornerstones of golf and, dare we say, life. Unless you have a clear intention, you have nowhere to place your attention. And if your attitude is bad, then you're going nowhere. I heard a great phrase many, many years ago. A bad attitude is like a flat tire. You can go nowhere until you fix it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Karl, carry on.
Sorry, Gary. If you just think of those three words, Tony, you can pretty much look at the whole game in those three words. I know that sounds a big stretch, but you could look at any individual shot, whether you like it or not, has got those three components. Intention is do you have a clear intention, as Gary says, for the shot that you're about to play? Have you given your brain body system a clear map to follow? Once you have a clear intention, then you step into the shot and you decide to put your attention somewhere. And wherever your attention is will either be conducive to you being free and playing your best golf, or it won't be. And then the ball will do something. It's going to leave the club face. Hopefully it's going to leave the club face. And it's going to go somewhere, left, right, up or down. And then there's an opportunity for you to have an attitude about the outcome. Now, if the attitude is one of acceptance, because you did all you could, you're then free to create the next shot. But if your attitude is one of I shouldn't do that, or that's useless, or I'm hopeless at this game, or whatever story you may decide to tell about yourself, then you actually probably will cloud the intention on the next shot. So that those three words sum up any golf shot that you'll ever play. But for us, they sum up the whole game. Those, if you go no further than intention, attention, and attitude, and you really drill down into what you need to do with those three words, again, you have the potential to play a completely different game.
That sounds like a fun game to play.
Absolutely.
It's more fun. It's more fun than when you're not using that. Yeah.
Well, the great thing is you have control over what your intention is. You have control over what your attitude is. The middle bit you don't have any control over when you swing the club. Nobody in this, even Mo Norman, didn't have total control over what he got. He got pretty close, but he didn't have complete control. Nobody's eliminated bad shots in the history of the game. So when you realise that you've got no control over the middle bit, but you do have a bit more control over your intention and your attitude, then you start to seek consistency in the right places. That's
great. That's everybody for sure at the end needs to get that, but also to read the book. So each of you, your favorite training game of the ones that you talked about in the book.
Okay, I'll go first on this one. I like to, with my own game and with anyone I'm working with, take 3 golf balls and to the same target, play 3 different shots with 3 different clubs. And figure out the best way to get the ball from point A to point B. It's not a complex one, but it's a great fun one. And what it does is over time helps you develop a feeling for how to play different shots with different clubs, but it also helps you understand which ones you feel most comfortable with, which ones you feel least comfortable with. And it helps instill a great deal of confidence, because between the 3 shots you play with 3 different clubs, you'll definitely find one that you feel very, very comfortable with. There may be one that feels, I'm not quite so sure about that one. So that being the case, it helps your shot selection on the golf course and your execution. So it just makes it so much easier and so much more enjoyable. I keep talking about enjoyment of the game of golf. I think we sometimes forget that golf's a game to be enjoyed, not endured. No one's holding a gun to our head and dragging us down the golf course against our will to go and play the game.
Yeah.
It's a choice we make on our own. We do choose to do that. But, everybody, we ask everyone, why do you play golf? Oh, I really enjoy this, I enjoy that, I enjoy the next thing. But you would never think, if you saw them after they played, if you saw them in the clubhouse, sometimes you just think, God, you must be the most miserable bunch of people on the planet.
Yeah.
Because all they're doing is comparing themselves to their handicap or to par or to their playing companions. And they very quickly forget about why they play golf in the first place. So we always encourage people to be very, very clear on their why before they even step onto the first tee or onto the driving range or onto the short game area, practice bunker, putting green, whatever. You've got to be very, very clear in your why and stay true to that why as well.
Okay, then so one more.
Yeah, it's an old one, but it's a good one, I think, Tony. My favourite. I've used it for many years with some of the better players on the tours. Is just simply par 18, where you go out with one ball. You play with the golf ball that you're going to play golf with on the golf course. You have your putter with you. You've got your glove with you if you normally wear a glove. You've got your ball marker. You do absolutely everything that you would do if you were playing the real game of golf. But what you do is you go to an area that you can chip, and you play from 9 different locations. Ideally, you'd pick maybe 3 medium, 3 difficult, 3 easy shots, and every one of the holes is a par 2. and that makes you par 18. And many people listening will have heard of this. It's been around a long time. But basically what you do with this game is you recreate every single question and every single demand that the real game asks of you. That's one shot from a unique place. You've never had the shot before. You're never going to have it again. You've got to chip it on, hole out. There's a score involved. So in 15 minutes, you can have an incredibly productive practice session because you're simulating the complete demands that the game is going to ask of you when you go out and play. It can be frustrating. It can create emotion, but that's what the game does anyway. So it would be a good idea to practice with some of those ingredients in your training sessions. Yeah.
Now, and you talked a bunch in the book too, both great games, about people competing against each other. People don't do that enough, do they? Just for fun.
They don't.
And you talk. I think it was Padraig Harrington and Shane Lowry.
Yeah.
Particularly.
Yeah.
That's what you played for a can of Coke and a packet of crisps, or whatever it was, or you play for the golf ball that you're using. You don't want to lose that. So all of a sudden you become very, very competitive, and technique goes out the window, and it's all about creating the shot.
Yeah,
which we are great believers in, because that's what works. It really does work. Harrington and Shane Lowry are two of the most incredibly impressive short game artists. And do you think they're comparing techniques? I don't think they're even paying attention to the other's technique. It's all about trying to take a pound or a dollar or numbers out of their opponent's pockets. It's all about creating the shot and getting the ball close to or in the hole. And they just go ahead and do it. And these guys are fiercely, fiercely competitive.
Yeah.
And they both benefit from it. And I think we could all learn something from that.
Well, this has been another delightful interview with the two of you, Gary and Karl, and you've got another winner in this book. I hope you're starting to see that as people buy it. I'm going to put a link to your website where people can buy it, but also to Amazon where they can get it. But thank you for sharing so many interesting, great, and valuable concepts on the short game today.
Our pleasure.
It's been a pleasure, Tony.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Great questions.
The Golf Improvement Podcast is sponsored by Tony Wright and Game Improvement Golf. Tony creates exceptional golf clubs. You shoot lower scores.
Gary and Karl, thanks for creating another great resource for golfers who want to play their best golf and enjoy their golf games and their short game more. I put links in the show notes to where you can buy Gary and Karl's new book directly from their website or where you can buy it on Amazon.com. Intention, attention, and attitude. I just love what they shared about that at the end of the interview. My shout out today is about another new book, How We Learn to Move by Rob Gray. Rob is a motor learning expert and creator of the Perception and Action podcast. And this book is creating a huge number of thoughts and ideas in my head for how to help golfers I work with to play their best. One to buy. And I guess I just have to, if you haven't heard any more about this, just mention briefly again about the hole-in-one I had about a week ago. I never truly expected it was going to happen, and it was a delightful and amazing experience. Well, that's it for today. In 2 weeks, my good friend Bruce Rarick from Burnt Edges Consulting will be back with me to talk about a subject we actually should have discussed long ago, the importance of vision in putting your best. Until then, take care and stay safe.
Game Improvement Golf, your source of information and inspiration to become an exceptional golfer now. www.gameimprovementgolf.com